Want to say something to YouTube, or are you done?
Hi.
That's it?
No.
Well, what else do you want to say? That's it? You just want to say hi. This video is not meant for brand new players. This is meant for people who have been playing the game at least 6 to 7 months. So if you haven't been playing this game for at least 6 to 7 months, know that this will be helpful in the future, just not right now for you. Jump into it. So in Genshin Impact, there are a total of 4 weekly bosses currently that we've had for a very long time. We have the wolf for Dvalin. We have the child boss, what we had since 1.1. We got the Storm Terror boss, and after that point, we got the Ajata weekly boss. That gives us a total of 4 weekly bosses. And into the addition of the new boss, which would be La Senora, is going to be the 5th weekly boss. Now, every single week, these weekly bosses are going to take a total of 150 resin to complete, where 3 bosses are going to take 90 total resin, and the last boss is going to take 60 resin. And with the new addition of the La Senora boss, there's going to be another 60 resin on top of this, giving it so that you're going to be spending over 210 resin every single week on these weekly bosses. Now, what that means to me is that you're going to actually need to spend a little bit less resin on your other activities throughout the week, which is kind of unfortunate. So if that's the case, are weekly bosses going to be worth it going forward after a certain point? If you're just starting Genshin Impact and you're within the first few months of the game, as in the first 5 to 6 months, it is definitely worth to keep farming weekly bosses. There's no question for any of you. You should definitely farm weekly bosses every single week. There is no problems with farming any of them, and you should farm all of them within the first 5 to 6 months of Genshin Impact. After the first 5 or 6 months, however, that's where it starts to get tricky. And the resin that you're going to be spending on these weekly bosses is no longer going to give you just the talent materials that you're getting out of the bosses. You're actually going to get only a few different resources, because the talent materials after a certain breakpoint become less valuable. And because they're less valuable, they're only going to be super low value for free-to-play players and extremely low value for budget players as well, but be very high value for whales. So if you are a whale, it is going to be extremely beneficial for you to farm weekly bosses until you get enough talent materials to get every character in the game up to talent level 9 across the board. Once you've gotten every single character out of there for talent level 9, that's your stopping point. And the reason you can know that you have a good stopping point, because in Genshin Impact, each weekly boss actually has a set amount of characters per material, and those set amount of characters have not actually increased once the Ajata boss came out. Once they released the Ajata boss, there actually haven't been any other characters added to the pool for any of the materials that be coming forward. And because none of the characters that seem they're going to have any of the old materials going forward, and we're only going to have characters providing the new materials, you may not need to farm these weekly bosses, and that's kind of why this whole thing came out. Now, since the start of the game, Dvalin plumes have been exclusive to Bennett, Diluc, Jean, and we have Dvalin claws exclusive to these 4, Dvalin size exclusive to the Traveler, Chungyang, Beidou. All these materials have been exclusive to these characters, and these ones have actually not really increased since the start of the game. All the new characters in Genshin Impact have actually taken other materials. So for every new character that's come out, there has been a new weekly boss to come up with for all those mats. Every character that has come out in Genshin Impact since the launch of the game actually had a set of materials between Dvalin as well as Boreas, where every new character that was added to the game had a new boss tied to it. So Zhongli, Albedo, Jin Yang all take, of course, child boss materials. Then there's going to be 3 boss materials per character after that point. Now, because every single character in Genshin Impact since the launch of the game has their own set materials and new characters receive new materials, we can kind of extrapolate, since 1.1 this has been the case, there's only ever going to be materials that are going to be available going forward for the future characters. So whenever there's a new weekly boss, we can assume once we've max loaded the current weekly boss, there's going to be the next boss is going to have a new boss material. So that means that if you get to a point where you get talent level 9 on every single one of these characters, then at that point, as a free-to-play player, that's going to be your stopping point. So there's going to be 132 talent mats that you're going to need in total from each of the weekly bosses between Dvalin and Storm Terror. Oh, sorry, not Boreas and Storm Terror, sorry. But since you get about 2.5 talent mats per boss, it'll take you about a year, so 52 weeks and a week. And that's if you're going to be leveling every single character in the entire game. So at that point, that is the perfect stopping point for stop farming any character going forward, especially since 2 of those characters, of course, are going to be the Traveler, potentially out of this boss. So I would say that if you're gonna be farming a boss for about a year, that is the point where you're gonna need to stop farming any boss in Genshin Impact, okay? 1 year. Takes 1 year to fully farm a character, fully farm a boss to get all the materials that you possibly need because Dreamsolvent now exists. Now, the only other argument is that if you are a whale and you are going to be maxing out every character in Genshin Impact, of course you're going to still want to farm every single boss every single week so you can get the Dreamsolvent. But if you are a free-to-play player or a budget player or someone who does not do resin refreshes in order to get the characters maxed out that you really want, there is no reason for you to farm one weekly boss past a year marker from the Dvalin and Storm Terror fights. And for the other weekly bosses, it takes about 43 weeks, which is about 11 months or so, for you to farm any weekly boss in order to get max talent max for these characters. That's how long you need to farm these bosses if you're gonna be maxing out every single character on these bosses. If you're not gonna be maxing out or you find characters on here that is going to not be something you wanna max out, you can subtract about 5 weeks off that time frame for every character that you don't want to max out. For every player in Genshin Impact, if you're looking to continuously farm weekly bosses, it's just not worth the resin unless you're a whale and considering leveling up every single character in Genshin or trying to do that for a lot of different weeks. At a certain point, you're not going to want to stop. And for every character that you want to crown in Genshin Impact, you're going to add another 3 weeks. So for every triple crown character, it's another 3 weeks. For every double crown character, it's another 2 weeks, and every single crown character, it's another week. Now, the only other thing that you could say that you would want to farm these for is the prototype billets. And the prototype billets, if you're looking at them, potentially are not really worth getting on these types of bosses. We did some research on prototype billet drop rates, okay? I found this thing on weekly drop rates for everything for the elite weekly bosses, and it goes over some of the rates that are on here for prototype billets, etc. And it looks like the weekly bosses for a prototype billet, they say on here is about 16%, looks like 12%. And that I was doing everything on 16%. Here it says 12. All right, so when you're doing math regarding probability for rate calculations for drop rate tables and everything, a 12% drop rate, most people equate to like just rounding it down to 1 in 10 and say, okay, at that point, it's gonna be like, I don't know, 10 weeks until I get one prototype billet. That's not how the probability would work, but so if you ever want to figure out what the actual probability of you getting something is, you can use a coin flip calculator. And what you do, and this works for summon math, etc. You take the number of weeks, let's say 10 weeks at this point, right? Because that's what people said. You're gonna change it to at least 1 heads and change the rate table to 0.12. In 10 weeks, there's a 72% chance that you get the drop. That's not 100%, that's 72%. So 28% of people will not have a drop by 10 weeks in. If we go to like 15 weeks, it's like 85%. You go all the way to 20 weeks, it's like 92%. Usually 95% is a good stopping point or so, because that's when almost every single person has one. Now, if you want to say at least 2, that's 80% of people are going to have at least 2, but 20% won't. So you can actually equate it to this type of math, and that's your actual probability of getting it if everything affected it. So this is I'd say somewhere between 1 in every 10 weeks to every 24 weeks, depending on your luck and how lucky you think you are, is the actual drop rate, what you should expect as a player. It's very important that you take the exactly, make it at least, by the way, because if you do exactly, the probability gets all freaking weird. Now, this type of calculation is not perfect math, and you have to believe that each individual thing that you did for a prototype drop rate affects your future drop rates, which most probability is kind of based on. So this is like high tier statistic, but you can actually do it based on belief sets. If you believe that you did the runs before and that actually equates to your drops now, then this is how the math works. If you don't, then it's just a unique 12% every single time. And if you believe that it's going to be somewhere between 10 to 24 weeks for you to actually get a prototype billet, it might be a good idea for you to stop farming prototype billets out of the weekly bosses for the 60 resin fights, not so much for the 30. So you just should always do 3 bosses per week, no matter what bosses they are. You should do at least 3. The resin efficiency is really, really high there, and that's always worth. Also, this drop rate table is in the description below if you need it. Other thing that I wanted to mention here is the drop rate on artifacts and the resin efficiency of everything that you're getting. You get when you're actually doing the crystal comparison, the crystals actually are completely devalued in Genshin Impact for as far as drop rates go, because you get so many of them in the weekly drops, as well as getting them through other sources. So crystals are a very, very low value and reason to do this. The main reasons that you should be doing any weekly boss are the artifact that you get, the prototype Billet, as well as the weekly boss material, and Dreamsolvent for the other characters. Now, this is what I do find on free-to-play accounts, though. Okay, on my fully free-to-play account for British Seka, which is just at AR57, I've been farming weekly bosses every week, and I have not stopped at all. And this is where I'm currently at for weekly boss materials. I currently have in excess of 1 billion boss materials for all the child materials here. I also have all the materials that I need for Dvalin and Stormturf for quite some time. And the only boss that I really need to keep farming, of course, is the Ijada fight. And as far as Dreamsolvent goes, oh shit, I didn't use my parameters. As far as Dreamsolvent goes, I have 18 Dreamsolvent. This is not a flex. This is a, hey, I'm a free-to-play player. I don't really need Dreamsolvent as an endgame 11-month player. The reason most 11-month players aren't going to need Dreamsolvent if they farm weekly bosses every single week is a really simple reason. That reason is Mora. Okay? No one in their right mind as a free-to-play player has any freaking Mora at all. And if you are a free-to-play player, leveling talents past 9 is way too expensive, and even leveling talents to 9 is extremely expensive. And most people just stop at talent level 8 because it's a lot cheaper. So because Mora is still a major issue for free-to-play players, and you have to budget so thin wire, crowning characters like Kaya is kind of a pipe dream unless you're just a stupid Giga Chad like me. So because on free-to-play you have so many other materials, Dreamsolvent is not something you need to continuously farm for. And the thing about prototype materials is that prototype weapons, even though like over a very long period of time, become very, very valuable to have. However, now because La Senora is going to be a weekly boss that's going to add on to the weekly boss values, there's going to be a total of 210 resin you'll be farming every single week. And topping off 60 resin every single week by not farming a weekly boss potentially could be a good idea. I am personally going to continuously farm the weekly bosses until I get enough to crown every character, which is going to add another 5 weeks onto my time. After that point, I'm probably going to stop. I know that's a waste of resin, but I like prototypes, just not that much. By the way, if you don't know this, Radish meta OP. Yeah. So, make your own decision. Just know that you might be able to save some resin. Well, that's gonna do it with this video. My name's Sekapoko. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys enjoyed the video, of course, like, subscribe, all the fun stuff, and you guys have a wonderful rest of your day.